Today I'm going to be doing my 2024 reading wrapped up. I read 22 books this year and I tracked them all on Goodreads. I'm going to do a short kind of synopsis of each book and then I'll give my own personal thoughts and ratings afterward. I'm going to go in the order that I read them in, not that it really matters. So the first book that I read was Hamlet, actually, by William Shakespeare. I read it for English class. I did not willingly read it, but I still wrote it down on Goodreads. Obviously, it's Shakespeare. It's complicated, kind of brutal to read, but I had a really good English teacher that kind of summarized it and explained to us what the heck was going on. So honestly, it was pretty entertaining. There were some plot twists, some scandals. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I wouldn't have enjoyed it if my English teacher didn't essentially translate. But I rated it a 4 stars, so it was actually enjoyable, even though I was forced to read it anyway. The next book that I read was The Handmaid's Tale, a very well-known book by Margaret Atwood. Honestly, it was kind of underwhelming. Nothing really happened in the book. I did read it in February, I think, of last year, so it's been a while, but I just remember there wasn't much going on plot-wise. Like, there was no intense moment climax of the story. It was kind of just underwhelming. I rated it a 2 stars, which I'm generally pretty generous with my ratings, which I'm sure you'll see coming up. So a 2 star for me is like almost DNF, kind of. I think I did almost stop reading it. Next is From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle. This was recommended by a friend, and it's a memoir of an Indigenous guy who struggles with homelessness and addiction. Again, I read this at the beginning of 2024, so my memory of all of the books from the beginning of the year is kind of hazy, but I do remember it being pretty crazy. His life story, it's just like one thing after the other, bad thing after the other, craziness. I actually really enjoyed the story. I'm not a huge memoir person, but I know I got through it in like 3 days, really enjoyed it, rated it 5 stars. Overall, it's a story of strength and perseverance. It's generally really hopeful in the end because he does get out of it. He writes his book, and his life does turn around. So definitely recommend that one. That's a 5-star read for me. The next book I read was The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill. I'm just looking down because I have a little notebook full of notes so I could remember what I thought about each of the books. It's in a kind of fairy tale village, very whimsical, just a light little graphic novel. I like to mix in some graphic novels throughout the year. And yeah, I gave it a 4 star. Next, and it's kind of along the same lines, it's actually by the same author, Kay O'Neill, Tea Dragon Society series. It's 3 books, and I read all 3 of them this year. Village of humans and animal creatures. They have this tradition of having pets that are tea dragons. There's like a chamomile dragon, a chai dragon. It's really adorable. And there's also really cute queer couples. So overall, the story is really adorable. And I would definitely recommend that whole series. I think with each of the books, I literally read them in one sitting. And yeah, I rated that series a 5 star. And again, that's a graphic novel as well. My next read for 2024 was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. In the last 2 years, I think, I've been reading the series, and I finally finished it this year. So I read The Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling, of course. Obviously, do not condone the author, but I do love Harry Potter. Always have as a kid, and I wanted to read the books. Honestly, it's kind of obvious, 5 star. We all know and love Harry Potter. So I read Milk and Honey, The Sun and Her Flowers, and Homebody, all by Rupi Kaur. These are her poetry books. Honestly, I'm not much of a poetry person. I was just in a poetic mood, I guess, at that time in the year. I've seen that Rupi Kaur has a lot of criticism because her poetry is very simple, nothing to write home about. And honestly, that's probably true. It's very simple, and that's why I kind of liked it, because I'm not much of a poetry person, and I found hers to be very accessible. But again, it is kind of nothing memorable. I did enjoy it, which is a lot to say for me and poetry. So I would say if you're not much of a poetic person, but you still want to try something simple out that you could still get something out of, I would recommend her series. Rating wise, I gave Milk and Honey a 4-star. The Sun and Her Flowers, 4-star. And then Homebody, 3 stars. Because I think Homebody is the last one I was reading, and I think I was starting to get kind of sick of it, and it wasn't doing much for me at that point. Next is a thriller / mystery. It's called Dead Sleep by Greg Iles. This one was recommended to me by my sister. It was actually very entertaining, quick read, exciting plot. It definitely kept me interested. I can give a brief synopsis from what I can remember. I don't want to spoil anything. Essentially, there's these famous paintings by an unknown artist of women who I believe are nude, and they appear to be sleeping or dead. No one's quite sure. And they're kind of going famous. They're worth millions of dollars. And this famous photographer, Jordan Glass, hears of them, and she goes to see them, and one of the paintings is of her. And this isn't really a spoiler because it's on the back of the book, but the painting is of her, except it's not. It's of her twin sister who has gone missing. And I'll leave you there. That's essentially what happens. And then there's a whole journey. Not going to spoil anything, but very interesting, intriguing. It was a good read. My only criticism is that I remember the ending being a little bit like underwhelming, but that could just be me personally. Overall, I still gave it a 4-star. Next is Find Me, which is a continuation of Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. I read the Goodreads reviews of this, and they were honestly not that good, but I still decided to buy the book because I love Call Me By Your Name so much, like many others do. And I honestly agree with all the reviews. It was not good. To be honest. I went into it looking for a continuation of Oliver and Elio's story, and half the book is about his dad randomly, simultaneously falling in love with some woman on a train. That's half the book. And we're not introduced to Elio until halfway through the book. And it's about him simultaneously falling in love with some man. And then within the last 15 pages, Oliver and Elio have reunited and they're living together happily ever after. And that's it. It felt unnecessary, unsatisfying, not at all the story that I was looking for. I was hoping to see they'd grown up, they'd lived apart for a while, and then they're reuniting, and then they live happily ever after, but more context, more unpacking. Just, it really fell short, and it's really disappointing. Like, there was no point to it being written. It should have just been Call Me By Your Name and left at that. Such a missed opportunity. Needless to say, I gave it a 1 star. Moving on, after that I read The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. It's actually a reread. I read this when I was maybe in grade 7 for school, and I remember really liking it at the time, which was kind of revolutionary for me because I didn't read then, and it stuck with me. So I decided to reread it this year, actually. It's about 2 teen gangs, and essentially just a rivalry, and then a lot unfolds. But yeah, it was entertaining, quick paced, few plot twists, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I rated that one a 4 stars. Next, a little more whimsical. I read Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Very well-known story. Honestly, I found the book didn't portray the crazy, wacky, whimsical world that we know of as Alice in Wonderland. I feel like it didn't do it justice, which is kind of crazy because it's the original story, but the plot, the imagery, it kind of fell short, I feel like. I gave that 3 stars just because it's like Alice in Wonderland classic, but yeah, I feel like the movies of it are better because they kind of expand on it, they make it wackier, there's more of a plot, but yeah, I gave it a 3 star. Next is another memoir, actually. I'm very surprised. I read a few memoirs this year, but it's All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember much about this book. It's a memoir about a queer black boy growing up, his experiences coming out, and yeah, I gave it a 5 star. So obviously I enjoyed it, I just literally can't remember any specifics. Next is another graphic novel series. It's Hooky. I read the first and second book. It's by Miriam Bonestray Tour. I feel like I definitely butchered that, but there are 3 books actually. I read the first 2 this year and I'm planning on reading the 3rd one very soon. This one is super fun, fast-paced. It's a graphic novel, as I said. It has witches and magic and really wholesome, adorable friendships that I absolutely loved. Very lovable characters and a really good plot. It has a lot of action, which really got me through them because they're pretty big graphic novels. But yeah, I rated both of those a 5 star. Next is Genderqueer, which is another graphic novel. I love graphic novels. This one's actually a graphic novel memoir, which I've never read before. And as you could tell, it's about the author's lifelong journey, the struggles, the triumphs, all related to gender and sexuality. I really enjoyed it. I thought it had great representation. I also read it completely in one sitting. And yeah, I rated it a 4 star. Last book that I read is Coraline, which I really loved the movie Coraline, so I decided to try out the book. It's by Neil Gaiman, kind of a dark story. It's about Coraline, who is a young girl. She moves into a new house and they notice a door, a creepy little door, and she ends up going inside of it, and then she's transported into a alternate reality of the same house with her parents and her friends and her neighbors, but there's something sinister with it. And her parents in this alternative reality call themselves the other mother, the other father, and it's really eerie and creepy. It kind of has an overarching message of being grateful for what you have. Yeah, it's dark, it's whimsical, it's kind of fantasy in a way. I rated it a 4 star. I do think, honestly, the movie is better. Maybe it's just because I can visualize it, obviously, with the movie, but the movie expanded on it and it was more detailed and interesting. But again, the book is very good. I would recommend it. I'm just editing this video now and I realized I completely forgot to mention that I read the last book in the Harry Potter series, The Deathly Hallows. Obviously there's not much to say about it. It's a 5 star. It's Harry Potter again, but I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, that's all the books that I read in 2024. I believe it was 22 books. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you read this year, and what you would recommend for me to read. See you next time.